I watched the security footage replay for the 100th time, my mother wrapped in her hospital blanket, struggling to breathe as Richard threw her medical equipment onto our circular driveway. The timestamp showed 11:42 p.m., exactly when he thought I was stuck in a late meeting at Crawford Industries' Tokyo office. What he didn't know was that I'd been on a flight home after receiving an alert from our house staff. What he couldn't have known was that my business trip had actually been a series of meetings with our family's long-dormant board of directors. Your mother's care is bankrupting us. His voice crackled through the security recording. I won't let her medical bills destroy everything I've built. Everything he built. I paused the footage on his face, contorted with entitlement and rage, as he towered over my mother's fragile frame. Behind them, our mansion's lights blazed against the rainy night, illuminating the Crawford estate gates he'd insisted on installing after our wedding. Mrs. Crawford. My assistant's voice pulled me back to the present. The board members are assembled in the main conference room, and Mr. Crawford is in the lobby, demanding to know why his credit cards were declined at the country club. I checked my watch. Italian leather, a gift from my mother on my first day as Crawford Industries' silent CEO 15 years ago. The same position Richard thought he held, thanks to some creative paperwork and my mother's insistence on keeping our family's true power structure private. Have security escort him up, I said, gathering the documents I'd spent 3 years preparing. It's time he learned what bankruptcy really looks like. The conference room fell silent as Richard burst in, his golf clothes still immaculate despite his obvious agitation. Elizabeth, what the hell is going on? The club said our accounts are frozen. Not our accounts, Richard, I corrected, standing at the head of the table he always claimed as his spot. Your accounts, the ones you've been filling with money that was never yours to spend. He laughed, but there was a tremor in it. I'm the CEO of Crawford Industries. Every account in this company belongs to me. Actually, my mother's voice came from the doorway, steady despite her oxygen tank. That's not quite accurate. Richard spun around, his face paling. Margaret? You're supposed to be in that nursing home I arranged. You mean the substandard facility you tried to abandon her in? I interrupted, pressing a button that filled the wall screens with financial records. Let's discuss your arrangements, Richard, starting with how you've been embezzling from my family's company for the past 5 years. Your family's, he trailed off, finally noticing the board members' stern faces. This is ridiculous. I built Crawford Industries from nothing. Did you? My mother moved to stand beside me, her hospital bracelet stark against her silk blouse. Because I remember building it with my late husband 30 years ago. I remember stepping back when Elizabeth married you, allowing you to play CEO while she actually ran things. And I certainly remember you throwing me out of my own house last night. The house is in my name, he sputtered, but I was already sliding documents across the table. Is it? Check the property records. Check everything, Richard. The house, the cars, the private jet you love showing off. They're all Crawford family property. Property you tried to leverage for loans last month without board approval. His face went from pale to ashen. Those loans were for business expansion. They were to cover your gambling debts, I cut in, bringing up more records. Did you think we wouldn't notice the transfers to offshore accounts? The suspicious withdrawals every time you visited Vegas? The desperate attempts to access my mother's private trust? I was protecting our interests. He slammed his hand on the table, making my mother flinch. That woman's cancer treatments were bleeding us dry. No, I said quietly, they were cutting into your personal spending. The company's medical insurance, which you tried to cancel last week, covers all her treatments. Treatments she needs because she spent 30 years building this empire while raising me alone after Dad died. The board members were now openly glaring at Richard. They'd known my father, had watched me grow up in these halls, had quietly supported my mother's decision to let her new son-in-law believe he was in charge. You can't do this, Richard whispered, his golf tan fading to a sickly gray. I'm Richard Crawford. I run this company. Actually, I pressed another button, and security entered with boxes of his personal items. You're Richard Morrison again. The board voted this morning. You're not just fired, you're facing criminal charges for embezzlement, fraud, and elder abuse. Elder abuse? He laughed desperately. Because I wanted some peace in my own home. Your home. My mother's voice was steel wrapped in silk. Let me show you something, Richard. She picked up a remote and switched the screens to last night's security footage. The board watched in horror as Richard dragged my mother into the rain, as he threw her oxygen tank, as he ordered the staff to delete the footage he didn't know automatically uploaded to my private server. My daughter, my mother continued, gave you everything you wanted. Power, position, the illusion of control. All you had to do was be a decent human being. Instead, you showed us exactly who you are. Elizabeth, he turned to me, switching to the charm that had once won me over. Honey, we can talk about this. Your access cards have been deactivated, I informed him. Your accounts are frozen pending investigation. The prenup you insisted on, it only protected your assets, which it turns out were virtually non-existent. Everything else, it's all Crawford family property. Where am I supposed to go? He looked around wildly, as if seeking an ally among the board members who'd always seen through him. I hear there's a basement studio apartment available in Queens, my mother suggested. The landlord charges weekly, which should work well with your new circumstances. New circumstances? You'll need something within walking distance of public transportation, I explained. Your car lease has been terminated, and I doubt you can afford cab fare on your new budget. Budget? The word seemed to physically pain him. The board has agreed to a small monthly stipend while the criminal investigation proceeds. I pulled out one final document. Provided you sign this confession and agree to full restitution of the embezzled funds. And if I refuse, then we contact the FBI, my mother said simply. I'm sure they'd be very interested in those offshore accounts. As security began escorting him out, Richard turned back one last time. I never would have married you if I'd known that I wasn't just in Harris playing at business, that my mother wasn't just a sick old woman you could discard. That's the problem with men like you, Richard. You see what you want to see, until reality comes for its reckoning. The last thing I heard as the doors closed was Richard begging to keep his country club membership. Just another entitled man learning that some things, like karma, can't be bought or bullied. 3 months after Richard's removal, I sat in my rightful office reviewing our latest acquisitions. The company's stock had soared 50% since the leadership restructuring, as the business press tactfully labeled Richard's very public downfall. Elizabeth, my mother entered, her strength returning with each successful treatment. You need to see Richard's latest LinkedIn post. I glanced at her tablet. There was Richard, now working as a junior sales associate at a discount furniture store, sharing an inspirational post about humility in business and respecting family values. The comments section was merciless. Speaking of family values, my mother smiled. His application for our janitorial position just came through HR. Apparently, that furniture store commission isn't covering his new basement apartment rent. After the boardroom incident, Richard had tried launching a consulting firm, trading on the Crawford name he no longer had the legal right to use. But without me quietly managing everything, his true business capabilities became embarrassingly apparent. Ms. Crawford, my assistant entered with a stack of documents. The divorce settlement is ready for your signature. And Mr. Morrison, he's in the lobby again. Let me guess, another attempt to negotiate? I checked the security feed. There was Richard in an off-the-rack suit that had replaced his custom-made wardrobe, shifting nervously near the reception desk. Actually, my mother checked her phone. He's here about the maintenance position. His landlord is threatening eviction, and apparently his parents won't take him in after what he did to me. The security feed showed Richard glancing repeatedly at the Crawford estate gates across the street, the same gates he'd once ordered me to drive my mother through that rainy night. Now she lived there while he could barely afford his basement studio's heating bill. Sent him up, I decided. Mom, would you like to sit in on this interview? Minutes later, Richard entered, faltering when he saw my mother sitting comfortably on the leather couch he'd once claimed as his power spot. Elizabeth, he started, then corrected himself. Ms. Crawford. I know this is uncomfortable. Is it? I gestured to a basic office chair. I think it's rather straightforward. You're applying for our evening maintenance position. This is absurd, he muttered. I used to run this company. No, my mother interjected, you used to pretend to run this company. There's quite a difference. I reviewed his application on my screen. Let's examine your qualifications. 5 years as alleged CEO, though our audit shows you actually spent most of your time at the country club. Multiple executive decisions, all of which were actually made by me or the board. Fascinating resume. You know I'm capable of more than cleaning offices, he protested. Are you? I turned my screen to show him the company's performance charts. Revenue is up 60% since your departure. Employee satisfaction has tripled. Even our charitable giving has improved. Though that might be because you're not embezzling from those funds anymore. Richard flinched at the mention of his financial crimes. He tried maintaining his lifestyle after the separation, right up until his credit cards started declining at his favorite steakhouse. I have obligations, he said quietly. Legal fees, rent, restitution payments. You mean the payments you've been missing? I corrected. The ones that were part of your plea deal to avoid jail time? My mother examined his paperwork. The maintenance position pays $16 an hour, night shift, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. You'll report to our facilities manager. You remember Robert, right? The one whose healthcare benefits you tried to cut while my cancer treatments were too expensive. Richard's face reddened. This is beneath me. More beneath you than throwing a sick woman out in the rain? I asked quietly. More beneath you than stealing from her family's company while pretending to be its leader. I said I was sorry about that. No, my mother interrupted. You posted a vague apology on social media, hoping to salvage your reputation. There's a difference. I pulled out the employment contract. The job is yours if you want it. But understand, one mistake, one moment of disrespect to any employee, and you're done. No references, no second chances, no mercy. He stared at the contract, reality finally sinking in. And if I decline? Then you can explain to the FBI how you plan to make your restitution payments without an income, my mother replied. I hear they're particularly interested in those gambling debts you tried to hide. 6 months into his new role as night janitor, I worked late reviewing our latest expansion plans. Through my office windows, I could see Richard mopping floors, his Rolex replaced by a plastic watch that could withstand cleaning chemicals. Dear, my mother called from her office next door. Have you seen Richard's latest performance review? Robert, our facilities manager, had written a detailed evaluation. Struggles with basic cleaning protocols. Appears to think he's too good for bathroom duty. Requires additional training and proper supply inventory management. He asked about advancement opportunities. My mother smirked. Robert told him to master the difference between bleach and ammonia first. Through the security feed, we watched Richard, the man who once commanded board meetings, being taught how to properly use a vacuum cleaner by the same maintenance staff he'd once treated as invisible. Mr. Morrison, Robert's voice was professionally stern. That's the 4th time you've mixed cleaning solutions incorrectly. This isn't like pretending to run a company. It can't fake your way through it. I never faked, Richard began, then stopped, catching his reflection in the window he was supposed to be cleaning. The image showed a stark contrast to his former self. The man who thought throwing a sick woman out of her own home was a display of power. My assistant entered with quarterly reports. Ms. Crawford? The Tokyo office exceeded projections, and Mr. Morrison's request for a shift change was rejected. Apparently his night supervisor doesn't appreciate his constant complaints about manual labor. I glanced at the security feed again. Richard was now scrubbing the very boardroom floor where he'd once sat in judgment of others' worth. Every night, he had to polish the table where he'd lost everything, clean the windows that had witnessed his downfall. He tried to skip his mandatory financial management class. My mother noted, reviewing the HR reports. The court counselor reminded him it's part of his plea agreement. My phone lit up with another notification. Crawford Industries had been named one of the most ethically responsible companies in America. The same business Richard once claimed needed his masculine leadership was thriving under authentic, compassionate direction. Ms. Crawford? My assistant reappeared. The domestic violence shelter we fund is ready for its expansion. They've named a new wing after Mom. Perfect timing, my mother smiled, showing me her latest medical report. My oncologist says I'm in full remission. Apparently, removing toxic elements from your life really does improve your health. After all, success isn't just about climbing to the top. Sometimes it's about watching others learn why they fell. And as I watched Richard methodically clean my mother's office windows each night, I thought about all the entitled men propped up by family wealth, all the cruelty disguised as tough love, all the quiet strength waiting for its moment. My phone buzzed one final time, a message from Robert. He finally learned how to properly dispose of hazardous materials. Maybe there's hope for him yet. Perhaps, my mother typed back. Some lessons can only be learned on your knees, scrubbing the floors you once walked on as a king. Because some karma doesn't need to be managed. It delivers itself, one clean floor at a time. After all, true power isn't in the ability to hurt others. It's in the wisdom to know that every empire built on cruelty eventually crumbles. And sometimes the best revenge isn't watching someone fall. It's making them clean up their own mess.